Hello there, my name is Victor Oguinka, and you're welcome to the midweek edition of Today in the News, and of course, all of those newspapers across the Federation, and looking at the major headlines everywhere.
Over 1,000 people are benefiting from free medical services provided by the FCT chapter.
Interested in this news. Arsenal's first club transfer record signed Pep.
Hello and good morning. Welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Precious Chukudi and I have with me my co-host. It's good to have you back and you're looking all fresh up.
Thank you. It's good to be here in the midst of this everything going on in Nigeria currently. You need to look fresh no matter what is happening.
Okay, nice one. I'll take a cue from you. Alright, so we're starting off from Vanguard, starting off with the front pages of the papers, and Vanguard, the main headline says #EndSARS, Lagos, Ekiti, Ondo, other towns paralyzed. The writer says Hoodlums burn 50 cars in Abuja. Benin prisons attacked, scores of inmates freed, police station attacked, arms scattered away. Edo government imposes 24 hours curfew, attacks spread to Auchi. Protesters block Sapele end of Warri Bini Highway. Protesters stabbed Saturday dies in Abuja. 12-year-old dies in Delta. It's right of you to protest, make demand, says Buhari. NHRC seeks prosecution of 35 indicted police officers. Protests caused by neglected agitation, says Obasanjo. Stop #EndSARS protest now. Northern Elders Forum. There's a photo story of protesters moving en masse from Ikeja along Lagos Belta Expressway towards Yanopaja. And stories above, we have federal government seeking $11 billion loan to construct Lagos Calabar rail line. Amici says, you can see that on page 12. On page 8, #EndSARS, governors want federal government to act on protesters' demands. On page 36, #EndSARS, call of protests, allow government meet your demands, Tinubu plead. Electricity tariff, CBN introduced framework for financing meters acquisition. Also, Sonwolu orders closure of school over protests. You can see that story on page 11. And away from Vanguard, move straight to the Punch newspaper.
And now the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have Federal Capital Territory security agents thugs attack protesters. Lagos and others grounded. Also, the writer says Prosas attackers burn 8 vehicles in FCT, injures scores of campaigners, travelers stranded, trek as protesters block Ogun, Lagos, Niger roads, others. Hashtag enters protesters. Show you understand youth plight. Obasanjo tells Buhari. You can see this on pages 2 and 10. And moving on to the stories below, on page 5, we have Kano's 17-year-old arrested while watching movies on their phone, dies in custody. Page 13, Ebonyi Assembly demands its 2023 presidency, issues a PDP ultimatum. 3 undergraduates, 3 others killed in Delta, Kwara, and Edo's court clashes. You can see these on pages 4 and 5. Still on pages 4 and 5, we have Edo imposes 24 hours curfew as Hoodlums attack prison and free inmates. Lagos arrest closure of public-private schools. You can see these on page 9. Group plans 10 million man pro-Buhari rally, demands police protection. You can see this on page 29. Moving on to the stories above, on page 21, we have CBN orders banks to clamp down on COVID-19 financial crisis. And on page 11, Undume 6 Maina's arrest warrant gets 21-day ultimatum, and PTF warns against traveling to United States, United Kingdom, France, and others. You can see that on page 11. And still on the Punch, on page 19, we have Tinubu hails protesters, carpets Hoodlums, and pleads for session. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch, on page 7, we have NHRC lists 35 indicted SARS operatives. Malami pleads prosecution. And that's all on the Punch. From there, we move straight to the Guardian newspaper.
And on the Guardian newspaper, we have main headlines: protests turned bloody, and the writer says organizers consider Belarus option. Protesters fought beneath jailbreak claim. Don't overthrow Buhari, Mietiala tells protesters. Northern Coalition backs down. Officials begin to rearrest of Edo jailbreakers. 12 killed in Abuja, Benin. Also, there's a photo story showing a cross section of protesters. And the CBN slams tough loan conditions on banks, discos, meter producers. You can see that on page 3. And on page 5, 2 feared killed in Delta, Kano, as police tear gas FCT protesters. On page 12, Buhari curious sermon on national unity. NMA confirms death of 16 doctors, warns of COVID-19 spike. And away from the Guardian, move straight to this day newspaper.
And on the front page of this day newspaper, we have a protest escalates as Hoodlums free prisoners in Benin. Lagos locked down. 3 die in Abuja, cars set ablaze. Obaseki declares 24-hour curfew. Sowolu closes school. Governors pledge to fulfill Marshall's demand. You can see that on the front page, and it continues on page 8. Still on page 8, we have you've made your point, end the protest, says Tinubu. Mandela's widow, Awoshika, others lead women's campaign for Okonjo-Iweala. You can see that on page 5. And on the stories above the nameplates, we have CBN rolls out financing a framework for mass metering program. You can see that on page 5. And lastly, on the front page of this day newspaper, we have Sowolu, Okowa, Obaseki, Erufai, others inaugurate police brutality panels. And you can see that on page 3.
And that's all we can take on the front pages of the papers this morning. We're going into the newspaper analysis segment. We'll be joined in by our guest, who is going to be joining us via Zoom. We'll be right back after this break.
See, imagine. Because that she's solely you.
What's that hit you now? What's that?
She has the right to video now. Okay, can you say?
Oh, what? Don't pass the motor since in here. What else?
testifying witnesses there, but they still took me away to collect money. I couldn't get them 50K, but I gave them 10,000 naira just for me to be able to travel down to the So we are out here today because we want to end SARS. Government to do something. When Okada people, they said they were aiding robbery, they banned them from movement. But now, we are saying we want an end to SARS because they are brutalizing and harassing us. And yet they are telling us that they can't end it. We want to end SARS today. This is why we are here, and we are sleeping here. We are not going away. So we end it. So this is what we say.
Why they vlog like that now? Why they vlog like that? Why they vlog like what do you do, Kwan?
This guy don't play ball. What's the way they up to go there go carry out?
Make me shoot me.
But why are they breaking our gates? Why are they breaking our gates? Why are they breaking our gates? For what now?
But that guy you just carried wasn't playing football. That guy you just carried wasn't playing football. That guy you 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 carried wasn't playing football. Shoot! Okay, you are shooting at us. You are shooting at. You are a police officer. You are shooting at us.
Shoot! Jesus! You don't check on shoot now, idiot! Arrest me! Come arrest him!
You should come out. You should leave yourself.
I got there. Don't worry. Can you imagine? So he's shooting at us. Just imagine. You go arrest me when they play ball. That I captured everything. I cannot there. Just imagine. Just imagine. This is happening in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Uoji, yeah. Just imagine.
Police station.
You just entered. They asked us to sit at home, and we are sitting at home. You went right inside somebody's flat and arrested the person. What for? And we are complaining, and they're shooting at us. Can you imagine what nonsense? What nonsense? We are talking and you're shooting. And they are the ones. They are the ones breaking the door. Just imagine.
You know it.
They are the.
Don't leave him alone. Don't say anything again. Don't say anything.
Guys, over that, we're not here by time. By time, anything false. How many people
Alright, welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's still today in the news of Abuja Live. My name is Precious Tripoli and I have with me my co-host. And we have our guest who's joining us via Zoom. She's in the person of Mrs. Fumi Komolafe, former labor editor of Vanguard newspaper. Good morning, Ma. It's good to have you join us.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be with you once again.
Alright, we're still in the whole protest mood. The hashtag NSAS every day. It's been over 12 days now, so that it's been going on. And the president has said that it is the right of the youth to protest and make certain demands from their leaders. In the light of the ongoing protest, what do you think about his statement?
Well, that's what they should say as a democratically elected president. And then we should see steps that are being taken to address some of the issues raised by the protesting youths. And I think to an extent that has been done, even by some governments. A democratically elected government cannot be averse to protest. People must be allowed to express their views. So the president's comments are just another.
All right, we're still talking about the protest and something very tragic happened in Benin. You saw the way the prisoners were let out. So what's your total observation of what happened in Benin City yesterday?
That was a very big disappointment. But again, knowing Benin City and Edo State, as a matter of fact, with due respect to everyone that is from that state, a lot of cultism around that place. Okay? What may have happened, maybe as a result of cult works, okay? And even the elite in that state, they promote cultism. So what we have seen is way off normal protest, and it is very, very unfortunate. I watched yesterday residents in Benin worried about whether they will be able to sleep because hardened criminals have been let out and anything can happen. It was very, very unfortunate what happened, and this says something about the type of security we can put in place. How much of security do we have in those correctional centers that we used to call prisons? We now call them correctional centers. How much of security do we have in place to protect the inmates and the warders working there? Apparently they were overwhelmed, and the court guys took over and set free their colleagues. A very, very unfortunate incident, I must say.
All right, a lot of factions of people, different factions are basically saying that this protest has been hijacked, and some people are saying that there are people who are seeing it as a way of getting back, to the government, and the other people are saying that people are using it as a way of causing violence and ruckus. Do you think that this protest has been hijacked by hoodlums of some sort?
Well, I would even prefer to use the word infiltrated rather than hijack. Okay? Now, when you have a protest that is going on like that for days without an identifiable leadership, you must expect that it will be infiltrated. And people infiltrate for different reasons. There are people who feel that this protest is denying them an opportunity to end their means of livelihood daily. Okay? There are people who see the protest as a threat. And I think that the infiltration is expected. But if the protesters had organized leadership and things were well put in place, there have been a way to check the infiltrators, whether they are sponsored or not. That is not the issue now. The issue that will go on forever. There must be strategies. Look, this thing is looking like what we call a wildcat strike. When you have a wildcat strike in a factory or in a workplace setting, the union leaders are set aside. It is the factory workers, the real downtrodden in the factory that take over. And when they do, it becomes very difficult because these people are not tutored in how to organize people strikes. And this is what we are saying. This is a spontaneous protest, if I may put it that way, around the country. And it is getting out of the control of those who started this, which is unfortunate. Because there is no strategy in place. A well-organized protest can put in place a strategy that, look, if people infiltrate, this is what we do. This is what we do. And although, let's come out clear that it appears that it's only in the few cities that we have seen this type of thing that happened in Benin, out of the news. It's just unprecedented. It's just completely out of the way. And there must be a reason. Some people, some cultists decided to go and free their members infiltrating the ranks of the protesters, and the protesters have no way of stopping them. They have their way.
Okay, now freeing those people in the prison. Now, don't you think this is actually putting a question, to the people guiding the prison? Because Nigerians are actually finding, a little loophole in the story. Because if you look at it, that prison is actually one of the most guided prison in Nigeria now. Don't you think there's something suspicious in that, coming up from there?
Well, it's not impossible that some warders or prison officials or correctional center officers are compromised. But that's not impossible. In our level in Nigeria, there's some level of corruption. So by the time the authorities carry out an investigation, they will know how it happened. It could have happened with the connivance of prison officials. It could have happened without their support, without their connivance. Because if they are aware by the number of people that besiege the place, that's why I asked the question, how much of security do you have in that type of place? So it's neither here nor there. Only an investigation will reveal this. But it is very, very possible that some people got compromised along the way and they allowed the infiltrators or protesters to have their way. It's not impossible.
Okay, you talked about the hashtag MSAS protesters needing a leader. Now, do you actually think that they need a leader? Because according to what they're saying, that if they have just one leader for the all protesters in the whole states, that the person might actually go to the government, have an agreement with the government which the youth are not in support of.
There's nothing difficult in having a leader. They can have a leader if they are organized enough to organize drinks, to organize cleaning of the place. Why would they have a leader? They have stayed out long enough to have a leader. What does it take to have a leader? Get your demands, place it in somebody's hands, and it goes. And somebody that can trust and say, okay, this is our demands. But in this situation, it's going to be, it will appear very difficult. Because where would the leader come from? Is it from Ekiti? Is it from Abuja? Is it from Lagos? Or where? Or are you going to have leaders from all the states? What kind of meeting would that be? So it's not, if they want to do it, they can do it. It's not easy, difficult to choose leaders. Give a mandate. This is internet world, man. You can type out what you want and give it to them, and they go. One or two, they are just enough. So if they can organize food, if they can organize video, music, medical, and whatever, I don't see why they can't choose it if they are honestly.
Okay, when you talk to youths now, to some youths now, they will tell you that this protest now is their own Arab Spring. I'm sure you've heard of the Arab Spring protest now, and we are talking about this protest not having a leader now. Can you call this now the version of Arab Spring, or can you now call it a movement also, the hashtag NSAS protest?
As a matter of started that it could be our own Arab Spring. Don't forget that Arab Spring was not just about protest of police brutality or secret. The Arab Spring was about a complete change of government. Okay? Now, if that is where we are going, then it's not an ordinary protest. You may be heading towards insurrection. And I'm not sure that the state, even the Arab Spring, the state did not fold his hand. No state will fold his hand and allow people on the streets to take over our government. However, I'm not saying it is not possible, but I do not think that the issues that are being raised are beyond discussion. In any case, any conflict, to bring it to an end, you will have to consult, you will have to dialogue. I agree, I mean, the police in this country, they have overstepped their boundary long ago, and nobody seemed to be putting them, checking them. They do things with impunity and get away. Lives have been lost. People who have lost relations.
Bobby's come up. The protest now is not just about police brutality, because we've seen people with different placards, people talking about reduce electricity, a fee, reduce that. We need employment, we need change, we need the government change. So now it's not all about that. They are demanding change. Now, do you think these protests share the same similarities with the Arab Spring protest? That is what I'm trying to treat towards.
It does, but in our own situation, if you want to change the government, you have to wait until there's an election and use your PVC. What these people can do now, what the protesters can do, is to convert the NSAS into a movement. Every political party, or most political parties, begin with movements. You have to have a movement, and you cannot have a movement without a leader. I mean, some people just have to be in the forefront, they have to be the leaders. So, anything short of that, you're trying to stage a civilian coup, and that is not acceptable. With all due respect to the protesters and their demands, we are all interested in a better Nigeria, a country that functions, that will give employment, that will be the one that we are proud of. But we are not asking for a civilian coup. And the one that has no leader, nobody is in charge. That is anarchy. And that will not be to the benefit of anybody. Just do it wrong, and you will find out how many people have been killed, directly or indirectly, either they are protesters or by state agents. We are not going to solve this problem by spilling more blood on our streets. We have had enough. Enough is enough.
All right. The former president Obasanjo made mention that the fight against police brutality is just more of like a product of extensive agitation ignored by the government. Do you agree with him? Because she made mention of something like that. But then, yeah.
Oh yes, I agree with him. Even right from his own days when he was president, these things have been going on for long. People are tired of governments that come for votes, and once they get into power, they do what they like. The people do not matter. The major culprits are many of these state governors. Many of these state governors, they are just irresponsible. They don't, once they get into office, they just don't care about the electorate. And the same thing seems to be happening even at the federal level. Okay? So Obasanjo is right. Everybody has reasons. This is pent-up anger, and people are using this opportunity to express, and this is legitimate. It is legitimate. It is for those in authority to think out of the box and see what can be done. We cannot continue like this. We cannot solve the problems of the incapacity of those who are, or the failure of government with blood or anarchy. No. Two wrongs will not make a right. Somebody has to be reasonable. And at the point that we are now, the government seem to be doing more than it's doing, while the protesters, they gather together, they talk. They also should have a review of strategy. We can't go on like this.
All right, judicial panels to look into the cases of human rights violation and police brutality, have been set up. What are your expectations on this panel?
Beautiful. I commend Lagos State Government. Lagos State Government took the initiative, and that is very commendable. Okay? Let people, that's part of a way of, getting out of this problem. Exile was the first, other things came in. Okay, people who have been brutalized, victims of all sorts of injustice. Yes, let's have an open discussion, an open panel, an investigative panel. Let the culprits be punished, and let people see that the culprits are punished, so that it will serve as a deterrent to other people. That you are in uniform and armed is not a license to come and to descend on other citizens because you are armed and you are in uniform, and to begin to kill and maim. That must stop. So I support the judicial committees or investigative panels that have been set up by one or two state governments. I know that Lagos State has done it, and I hope that others will follow suit, and it will take us somewhere. But then the protesters also have to have a sense, or they have to have confidence in it and appear before it. There's nothing that panel can do if we don't appear before it. Absolutely nothing they can do.
All right, I want to take a comment from one of our listeners and ask you a question. And this person says, they bring light for Nigeria before we off gen. Make una do something before we leave this road. Now, what strategies do you think that the government can do to meet the demands of these protesters?
Before the government can meet the demands, the demands have to be very clear. What are the demands?
They have a 5-for-5 agenda that demands
have to be articulated. They have to be articulated. Okay, we want A to Z. Okay, then the government begins to bring. I know that. We don't want SARS. There's SWAT in place, and people said it was too hasty and all of that. Well, I don't know about being hasty. Because the question is, if the idea had not responded, the same people will say, we demanded an end to that, nothing was done. We cannot have a society without policemen. It's not possible. Look at what has been happening. In the few days that the policemen are fair for their lives and they've gone off the streets, miscreants are taking over, hoodlums are taking over. We can't have that type of society. Let the demands be clear, and let's see the government take it one after the other. And then a time frame probably should be given. Give a time frame. FG, this is what we want. Give it 2 weeks. Let's see how it goes. And then you beat a retreat. Just to beat a retreat. You just can't. Nobody, no government. You cannot negotiate under duress. Both sides have to beat a retreat for consultation or dialogue to take place.
All right, thank you so much, Mrs. Fumi Komalafe, former Labour editor of Vanguard newspaper. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right.
Have a great day.
You too. Remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen, as well as you want to find out up-to-date stories of what's trending on the SARS matter. You can still go on our website www.vanguardngr.com to find out more of our top stories. It's been a fantastic day. The roads are still being barricaded. I just hope that we won't do another bout of trekking today. So just ensure that you remain safe wherever you are and you tread carefully, because it's really important in these trying times. Till we come away next time, I remain Precious Chukudi and my co-host
Damala Bushaki.
Thank you for watching.
Bye-bye.
Use this opportunity to say a word on the recent genuine concerns and agitations by Nigerians about the excessive use of force and, in some cases, extrajudicial killings and wrongful conduct by men of the Nigerian police force. The disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reform in order to ensure that the primary duty of the police and other law enforcement agencies remains the protection of lives and livelihoods of our people. We will also ensure that all those responsible for misconduct or wrongful acts are brought to justice. We also deeply regret the loss of life of the young man in Oyo State during the recent demonstrations. I have directed that the circumstances of his death should be thoroughly investigated. Meanwhile, it is important to recognize that the vast majority of men and women of the police force are hardworking and diligent in performing their duties. The few bad eggs should not be allowed to tarnish the image and reputation of the force.